Good morning, Phil. How are you today?
Not too bad. Too bad.
Good. So your business is very interesting. We've not had someone on within your industry before, so I'm intrigued to learn a bit more. Do you want to give us a little 2 cents on you guys and the history and where it came about?
Sure. I worked in the travel industry initially when I was sort of younger when I left school, not really knowing what I wanted to do as far as a career was concerned. I lived in Channel Islands. I was interested more in, sailing and drinking lots of beer and all that stuff as a teenager. And after 10 years of living there, I moved back to the UK to be with my now wife, and I was sat just labouring for a guy, and he said, "Have you ever thought about doing tree work?" And I said, "Well, funnily enough, I have, but I've never really, pushed out to do it." So he sort of suggested, "Well, we've got the tickets and did the training. You could pull in some tree work, and we could pick a bit up, doing it through him." That was 18-ish years ago, I would say, maybe just slightly under. And he now works for me as a consultant for one of our customers. So that's where the journey began. I say I started, I went and got all the tickets and the training that I needed to do, and had a smashed out Ford Fiesta, a spade and a fork, and it kind of, the journey began from there. A part of it was me working hard, a part of it was people I knew, a part of it was being in the right place at the right time, and a combination of all that together. All these years on, we've created a limited company. I've got a big team of, well, in my head, a big team of 18 or 19 of us, and some pretty cool bits of machinery and everything else that comes with it. So it's been a heck of a journey.
Yeah, so it's interesting. We often, when we do business, there's often kind of 3 or 4 ways where people end up starting a company. One of them is they're typically a technician, and they're doing the job already, and then they think, oh, it's gonna think stars align, and they end up doing it themselves, or they have an entrepreneurial seizure. Did you have an entrepreneurial seizure where you kind of thought, do you know what, I want to run my own company, or did you, as you said, did it just kind of happen
I
randomly?
think I think it got to a stage where I had to make the decision, where you go through the transition of having like a lifestyle business where there's just enough, and you live day by day, and you've got your first house and your mortgage, and the kids come along, and you sort of just get by, and there's a few quid in your pocket to go and have a few beers, and that sort of thing. To transitioning over to going, okay, do we want to create an actual business here, or keep it as a lifestyle thing? So definitely we had that moment, and I've got a good friend of mine who's like a silent director with me now. I remember that conversation in the pub, which we called the boardroom at the time, very well, and we decided that it was time to push through. But I guess prior to that, no, I mean, I never, even now, I never expected to build and create what we have now. It's a bit of a pipe dream, I guess. I always looked at what other people were doing,
Mm-hmm.
big bits of machinery that we now have and stuff, and sort of dreamed about it, but never did I really imagine that it would happen. And to a degree, even now, I look around at my staff and my offices and all the trucks lined up on the weekend and the kit sat in the yard at the weekend, and I go, flipping heck, we've kind of created this thing. Not to want to quote Jeremy Clarkson, but to a degree, we did a thing. And I think probably with my, I probably wasn't designed initially as a young person to to be doing what I'm doing now. You know, I was always probably one of those people that should have always worked for somebody else. But I think also it helps, you know, somebody told me once that I was never good enough and I would never succeed. So in my opinion, it also from a personal point of view, it's a great big two fingers up to that person to say, well, you were wrong. You know, we've done all right.
Yeah.
So
I was listening to a podcast the other day, and the guy talked about not saying that it's just an analogy, but like if you put a rat in a tube and you give it some cheese, it'll pull a little bit. But if you put a cat behind the rat,
yeah.
it go nuts. Were you running away from anything, or did you kind of just, you know, where did the drive come from? Was it kind of you just wanting to create a better life for yourself and your family, or was it
Yeah, I think, yeah, I think, yeah, I wasn't running from anything. I had nothing to run from. I think, you know, from a young age, I say I never really knew what I wanted to do. And, you know, I was 30 before I really started getting into this. And, well, probably a bit younger, but, you know, as a proper company, I was in my 30s, you know, we just got married with our first kids. So, yeah, so my job was to provide for my young family and that first house and pay that mortgage and everything else. And that's where we teetered on that. Do we keep it as a lifestyle thing, or do we go to a big business? And I think, or turn it into a business. And I think for me now, you know, it's a case of it's gambling in a way. You know, you buy big bits of machinery. Well, you don't buy it, you borrow the money, you know, and then you buy another piece of kit. So it's all about taking risk, and hopefully off the back of that risk, for me now, we are successful, we make reasonable money, I can pay myself the money I need to pay me, I can look after my team on a level that not many others can, so it keeps them keen and interested, you know, and so on. So yeah, it's about providing, definitely, but not just for me, but for my team as well. It's very important that they all have a slice of the cake when it's there to be had. But don't get me wrong, it's not always there. You know, go through peaks and troughs, and when we're in the troughs, we all go with that. But when we're at the peaks and something good comes around, great. Then yeah, we all have a piece of that cake. So yeah, it's very much about for me now about just providing and just I enjoy it.
Yeah, I always think that, you know, having run businesses myself a lot and done various things, there's a number of standing moments typically during the first couple of years that, you know, stand out to the business owner and can be massive learning points. What would you say were the one or two biggest challenges that you guys came across, and how did you get over those things?
I think, yeah, I think as time has gone on and still today, one of our biggest stumbling blocks is probably health and safety.
Interesting.
It's getting to the stage now where you won't be able to get out of bed without having a ticket to say you can do it safely. And so you know, it's sorry, I got distracted there. One of my colleagues came in. So you know, I had to. It got to a point where I had to employ. The company started doing more commercial based jobs, and you know, so we had to start employing more people to enable us to take on the bigger projects. You know, so I go back to the game, you know, you think, well, that's another wage, it's another overhead, but without it, we can't do it. And then you question yourself, well, do we really want to be doing this? Should we go back a little bit? But you push forward. So you know, it's that risk of employing more people that actually aren't earning you any money at all. But to have that skill set within the company, you've got to pay, again, very high salaries and everything else. It's a risk, it's a gamble, it's a worry. What else? I mean, I think I think just it's you're as good as your last job. I think that for me, one of the things we've got and always had is, if you have your own in-house team, your own people, you have full control over those people, where they go, what time they get to site, you know, the quality of the job that gets done, and what time they leave site. The minute you start bringing in other people, subcontractors, you lose a degree of that control. And some are good, some are bad. You know, we try to vet our subcontractors to the degree where they should have a certain amount of certification in place that sort of tells us that they should be okay. It doesn't always work like that, but generally, you know, not too bad. But you're as good as your last job. And when you start letting other people go and do your work, they sort of don't have the passion and the love for your company that you do. They have the passion and love for their paycheck that they're going to get at the end of it. So the attention to detail, are the fence posts, you know, straight enough in the ground? Are the rails joining up, or are they leaving a gap? Classic example. I'm going to look, not for me, thankfully, at a job after this interview. You know, the poor guys had some fencing done, and he sent me some photos yesterday. It's just diabolical, you know. I just look at it, and you know, I found myself apologising to him for somebody who I didn't know, but he works in my industry, shoddy work, you know, and it doesn't do us any favours at all. So. Yeah, I think yeah, there are a lot of good people out there, but there's also a few that aren't so good, and they don't do the industry as a whole any favours at all.
I think that you're hitting the nail on the head, to be honest, with something that a lot of our listeners will be facing. You know, as a business, there's a point where often you need to hire.
Yes.
Stage one, and to that point, it's mostly been you. And at that point, we start to see the realm of employing people, managing people, and the quality just, you know, not being carried through. As you said, that desire, the attention to detail, the want isn't there. That's a very interesting point, and I think a lot of people will be facing that. What have you been doing? Because you mentioned that you obviously put a lot of care and time into your team. Like, what have you been doing to ensure that gets better? Delegation, management, yeah, quality.
Yeah, so I mean, training is key. You know, for instance, we've just upskilled we did an in-house advert for a contracts manager. One of my senior machine operators, been with me 10 years. He applied for the job along with another guy who's been senior operator, who's been with me 14 years, and another guy who's been with me 8 years. You know, three guys applied for this job. One of them got it. So he started that last week, which means everybody else in the team gets to move up a little bit. You know, some of the younger guys get trained up on the machines and everything else, and then we bring up, you know, new people, you know, from the bottom, ideally from the bottom, and then we train them and they move up the ladder. And by doing it that way, they learn which end of the rake to use. So when they get higher up the ladder and we bring in new people, they can then turn around and pass on that skill set to every new person that comes in. Occasionally we have to bring people in, you know, that are slightly higher up, because that's just all that's available. Start finding good staff at the minute is quite difficult. It's a challenge for most people. But, you know, the guys that have come in from the very start, from the very beginning, they know everything because they've done it all. You know, myself included, I was very much on the tools and, you know, started on a rake, and now, you know, I run my own business. So we try to upskill our own guys as much as we can. There's no day the same. We have to adapt to the works that are coming in, and subsequently that requires additional training, or someone has to go and get a machine ticket or whatever. So, no matter what happens here within this company, hopefully we'll continue and do well and be successful. But let's say worst case scenario, we weren't and we didn't. We had to shut the doors tomorrow. Every one of my lads is employable because they've got every last ticket from the very basics up to the top machinery stuff. They'll get a job tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that for me is key, because no matter what happens here, I know they'll be all right.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, I own a decorating firm myself. My family does, and we've obviously within the firm work with thousands of trades and interesting businesses. It's such an important part of this country's infrastructure, and I feel like there is a kind of lack of companies that want to upskill and support workers like on that level. A lot of the people, I think, is just like job based. Like, we're getting jobs, we're getting people in, whatever. I think it's great to hear that you guys, want to really make sure that your team have those qualifications and the quality. And I think everybody listening should be in the industry should be thinking the same thing. I know for us, when we looked to scale in the past, from the decorating side, it's often, that is the most important thing. It's people, it's who are we bringing in and who are we training and upskilling. I think that's super important. So on that note, in terms of like what's next for you guys, obviously, like you've mentioned that there's parts of your industry that have some issues with quality. Does that give you some motivation to go out there and expand the business? Like, is that part of your plan to go and maybe unify some quality a little bit more across the space?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. To a degree, it's out of my control, what others do. I think it would be, it's not just me. There's a lot of good people out there trying to raise awareness of the cowboys, if you like. Don't always go with the cheapest price, because, there is a well-known phrase, pay peanuts, you get monkeys. It's very true. Quite often, the fencing job I was chatting about just now, he went with a guy who sold him a story that he could do a job and do it well. And, he's taken a lot of money off him, and now he's going to have to pay me or somebody like me now to go and do it again and put it right. And for me, if there were a way to really raise that awareness, I'd love to do it, but I wouldn't know how to do it. I think a lot of it is common sense, and it frustrates me when you hear these stories. But then you have to take somebody who says they can do something, you have to take their word that they can do it. So it's hard to raise that awareness. All we can do is go out and do the best job that we can. We know the customers that we work for are very happy with the works that we do, and subsequently we get asked back. We don't have a mass list of customers that we work for. Generally it's probably 5 or 6 solid customers that just keep asking us to go back and do the next one. Don't get me wrong, there are surrounded by a lot of smaller jobs, but the big jobs, the key ones that sort of bring the bread and butter in, they're happy with the work, so they keep work. If you and they're happy to pay the right money for it. And I think if you're happy to pay the right money for something, you will get a good job. And there's so many that, especially in the private sector world now, it's flooded with tree surgeons. Absolutely flooded. You look on local Facebook pages, someone puts a photo of a small bush outside the front door, and there's 50 plus comments and suggestions of local tree surgeons who would charge 75, 150, 300 quid, whatever it is, to go and cut a bush down. And I sit there and I say to my wife, just get a little handsaw. It will take you 3 minutes, put it in the green bin, and you don't need to pay somebody 300 quid or whatever they're charging to come and take this, that frustrates me. And then they try and have a go at the commercial world. Well, guess what? It's taken me probably the best part of 10 years now to seriously get my head around how the commercial side of things work. And what annoys me is I've spent tens, if not hundreds of thousands of pounds on training, accreditations, insurances, up-to-date vehicles, up-to-date machinery, and then they feel they can then go in and undercut you on a job, and then the customer that's taken them on then wonders why that they end up with a not so good job. There are so many frustrations, but it's just part of
I think frustrations are opportunities, Phil, in my opinion. I think there's a lot of things
they are, yeah. And sometimes you find a gap in the fence, and you've got to jump through it, and you've got to grab that opportunity.
a literal fence in this case.
What's that? Yeah, well, yeah, indeed, yeah. But don't get me wrong. That occasionally that happens, and that's where I go back to the right place, right time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, on that point then, so obviously I'm feeling like there's some opportunities here in terms of what you with you guys, and just from an advice perspective, like to other people in kind of the trades industries and various things, like before we get onto the big picture stuff, like what are your kind of, someone that's in maybe position that you were in 4 or 5 years ago, they're growing a team, like what would be the kind of couple bits of advice that you'd give them if they're struggling with quality, they're struggling with dealing with all the things you just said, like what would you say are your kind of two or three key points
to the customer,
to the business owner?
Don't be afraid to give people a chance. If we're talking about bringing people in, I took a guy in who was pretty much homeless, and he didn't last, but he did a good couple of years, and he worked hard. We trained him up again, like I say, we spent thousands on him, and for the couple of years that he was here with us, he did really well with the company, and he was a big part of the team. Sadly, it didn't last long for whatever reason, and it doesn't matter. The fact is, whatever he's doing now, he's got those tickets, he's got those qualifications, and for that period of time, he did well. So don't be afraid to take risks. Don't necessarily, I never look at a CV. For instance, for me, if I'm going to interview someone, I want to have a pint with them in a pub, in a relaxed atmosphere, because you get the real person, and we all know a couple of pints as well. You relax, and you get to see what that person's really like, because most people are nervous, no matter who you are when you come for an interview, that they're nervous. So let's create a really relaxed environment. And I think with health and safety, like I said, is a big thing. So you've got to invest in it. You've got to get that side of things absolutely right, because if you don't and you have an accident, it will come back to you. So absolutely nail the health and safety side of things. And if you've got to throw money at it, that's what you've got to do. Make sure you're covered. We are in one of those worlds now where if you don't cover your own ass, someone else will have it. And that doesn't matter what you're doing, whether you're decorating, like you say, or doing what we're doing, trees and hedges, or it doesn't matter. Giving advice, it doesn't matter. You've got to cover your ass. But I think the most important thing is just enjoy it. And if you get to a stage where you wake up in the morning and go, I just don't want to do this anymore, then seriously think about changing. Because if you lose the passion in what you're doing, that will rub off on your team, and your team will eventually become demotivated. And once that happens, that's very difficult to pull back.
Agreed. That is something that happens a lot. I think, owner starts to get a bit and then it kind of stretched down to the team. So thank you for that. I think that's super important. Now, next 3 or 4 or 5 years for you, like you mentioned that there's some interesting frustrations and obviously some gaps in the market. Do you what are you guys planning? What's the objective?
I think right now we are planning for the next 3 to 5 years. So we're actively trying to pick up framework contracts. We've just won a decent national framework contract, which is in place for 3 years. And we are working with a couple of other people looking at other framework contracts. And what that does is create stability, job security for my team. I believe the world right now is not in a great place. Our country definitely isn't in a great place. We've got elections this week. I mean, to a degree, it doesn't matter who wins. Either way, I think we're in for a rocky few years. So for me, it's about creating stability and job security for my team.
Yeah.
And everything else or anything else that comes our way, great.
Cool. Love that. And just a couple of rapid fires here. What is the what does success mean to you? What is the definition of success to you?
Yeah, good question. Success. I think just being able to lead a reasonable quality of life, but not just for me, for everybody.
Yeah. And if you could have a magic wand and either magically improve one area of your business or one area of your industry tomorrow, what would it be?
Get rid of the Cowboys.
Well, I think uniform quality. I think the business is asking for you to turn yourself into £100 million pound company, right? And uniform the quality across the country, maybe, Phil.
I think not £100 million company, and does everybody not dream of that? I mean, we're nowhere near that. We're doing a few million, and I understand the stresses and pressures that come with that. Am I geared up for £100 million pressures?
Not yet. Not yet.
I'll see in 5 years' time if we get there.
We'll do a reboot in 5 years' time.
Yeah, that's it. It'd be great to revisit, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what's around the corner. I don't. I think I don't think many people do. I genuinely think we're in for a rough time.
Yeah.
And I think it doesn't matter what industry you're in. People are already feeling the pressures. COVID was a big, expensive thing. Brexit, rightly or wrongly, I don't know. It's had good impact. It's also had some bad impact, hasn't it? I sit on the fence with it all, to be honest. I don't have an opinion. But I think because no one's allowed an opinion anymore, nobody really knows what's going on.
Yeah. Well, I think there was quite a lot of information for the audience, Phil, and I'm excited to see what that comes out with in terms of some education. So we'll leave the interview, but thank you very much for sharing us a little bit about your story, and hopefully in a few years' time we can do a little reboot when you're at 100 million.
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, let's see. Watch this space.